Hey everybody, this is Chris Thompson and welcome to session number 30 of Brain Software with Dr. Mike Mandel. He's the creator of MINDSCAPING, enjoys telling the completely fabricated story of the bagmen of Edward the Confessor, and he enjoys annoying people by pretending to be deaf. He is the buccaneer of hypnosis. He is Dr. Mike Mandel.
What? Scary thing I was deaf. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, once again broadcasting from the very nexus of global and universal hypnosis, Toronto, Canada, just steps away from the prestigious University of Toronto, where we have our birth, our hallmark window of exclusion, looking out over the world of hypnosis and finding it wanting, offering solutions to all the nation's problems through trance and behavioral adjustment, so that all hypnotists out there need to study with us. Otherwise, you'll wind up just the way you are. Thanks again.
Nicely done. You had me going there when you said what. I was like, what, did you just miss that? We just started the podcast.
What?
Very, very funny. Oh, man. Okay, let's start with, let's quickly talk about MINDSCAPING because the class has now happened. We've talked about it on many podcasts. A lot of you guys who are listening came out. You know who you are. It was an awesome weekend.
It was. The first Mindscapers certified have been set loose on the world and had some phenomenal shifts over the 2 days that we worked together. The first half of the first day is all the pre-frame and giving them the tools to do it. Then the afternoon of the first day after lunch, they start scaping each other. And of course, the entirety of the second day is spent Mindscaping. Now realize this is a modality that one 20-minute session will resonate with you for days afterwards. And these people did a day and a half of Mindscaping on all sorts of issues from, personality problems and disorders, lack of self-esteem, all the way up to dealing with views of money and personal wealth and health and welfare, all sorts of amazing stuff. And the results were, I was getting emails, Chris, as you know, young Andrea emailed and said that she slept for 12 hours straight after Mindscaping and her dreams were completely bizarre. Well, yes, we're making some incredible shifts in four-tuples below the surface in second attention.
Oh, yeah, I mean, even on the first day, I remember on the Saturday, we did so much stuff. And then on Sunday morning, we got to class and I said, Mike, I slept 10 hours last night. And you said, so did I.
So did I. I mean, it was just a remarkable thing. So much stuff goes on below the surface. People got some really interesting breakthroughs. So we will be running Mindscaping again at University of Toronto, and it is the only place in the world you can learn it.
It is an incredible system. At some point, we'll have to spend a little bit more time talking specifically about what it is, but maybe not quite yet.
Not as such. And let's also mention here, speaking from the very nexus of the plexus of global hypnosis, that we have another hypnosis course coming out. We have sold out the April training, which was 2 weekends, Saturday, Sunday, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, despite the fact that there are 4 days off in between. And we planned on having the April training ideally for local people, at least in Ontario, because they would be able to come in on their weekends and not mess up their work week, except for the one Friday. We nevertheless have someone coming in from Holland. We have people from California, all over the place. Well, we are now, due to popular demand. Did you like the RR? That was interesting. I caught myself there. Language police. We are now offering also a 5-day, Monday to Friday, back to Monday to Friday option, hypnosis, architecture of hypnosis course at University of Toronto, which will be in July of this year. So sign up for July, come out Monday to Friday, check online, look at the website, get the details. We want you to come study with us from around the world.
Yeah, so MikeMandelHypnosis.com/class is where we'll always keep you up to date on the next class. And it should be in July, and I believe we are inches away from settling on the date of the week of July 8th through 12th.
Rather unusual turn of phrase, Chris.
That was a very, very strange way to deliver it. Anyway, so we're gonna get all the details sorted on the website shortly. And
okay, so let's keep going. What are we talking about today?
Let's talk about pain and managing pain and discomfort, because we were just shooting some videos before recording this podcast, and that was a topic on some of the videos that we're posting on YouTube. So let's recap in the podcast.
Yes, and make sure you do subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll find there'll be endless supply of interesting hypnosis videos and like material. Pain management is a very interesting topic, and I have said before that when you typically talk to someone in an airport or on a plane, as I do with alarming frequency, being off to Jamaica this weekend, I have a 1-hour keynote in Montego Bay, so I'm going for a few days and be at Secrets Wild Orchid, which will be wonderful, and then off to Thunder Bay, Ontario to lecture at Confederation College on forensics. Now, I'm on planes a lot. And
Montego Bay to Thunder Bay. That's like polar opposites of the world.
It's the wrong way round, too. I mean, we're going from, 82 degrees Fahrenheit to...
Minus infinity.
Minus infinity, which you as an engineer know is clearly impossible. Just ask Lord Kelvin that one. But anyway, very often I'm on planes, and I always listen to my iPod because I just don't want people talking to me because I'm much of a recluse, as you know, Chris. And I know that if I start talking about what I do for a living, people find it so damnably interesting.
Can you help me?
It's all I'll hear about for 5 hours. And it starts with, can you help me quit smoking? No. But if you're a non-smoker, hypnosis can get you up to 4 packs a day. Hypnosis is not really well known for the things it's best at. Everybody thinks smoking cessation. And it's kind of an area that it has mixed results in, depending on how well you set it up. But in reality, pain management is where hypnosis absolutely shines.
Yeah, it does. And in fact, I was just, I'm currently still halfway through Dave Elman's book, Hypnotherapy, which you'd been recommending for years, and I finally got off my butt and started reading it. It's fantastic. Hypnotherapy by Dave Elman. And he spends a lot of time talking about pain management in there. And
yes, Elman taught a lot of doctors how to use pain management, and there's a lot of different ways to approach it. Now, let's look at some of these right away. If you are a hypnotist, hypnotherapist, and you're working with chronic pain, first of all, you have to ensure that you have permission in writing from the patient's primary caregiver. Now, when I work with people, I ensure that their doctor gives me permission to deal with pain because I do not want to remove all the pain of this, ongoing migraine headache they have and then discover that they actually had, a tumor in the parietal lobe or something that is now not bothering them as much as it continues to grow. So it's incumbent upon you to always get permission in writing. I have a sheet that goes out to their doctor. I've never had a doctor refuse to give me permission to work with pain because it's something that makes their job easier. I mean, people don't want other people to be suffering if they're nice people, and hypnosis will help immeasurably with this. And one thing you can do is you can reframe pain. You can change the meaning of it. So with hypnosis, you can tell the person that it is no longer painful by simply implying it through a shift in language. That discomfort you felt, notice is past tense, or you can turn the pain to pressure or an awareness rather than using what we call painted words. Painted words work in the amygdala, not the amygdala, as one hypnosis instructor says. The amygdala of the brain tends to code language, and words that set us off will be words that are triggered in the amygdala. And words like racism and all sorts of nasty words will make people go into a weird state immediately because the amygdala has coded them. Now, when you're in a hypnotic state, that is the time to avoid words that could set off the amygdala. So you want to stay away from words like pain, agony, horrendous things like that, and talk in terms of discomfort, that mild upset you felt, that sensation of pressure, that irritation. So really be careful of the wording you use when you have someone in a trance to begin with. And when you have them in a hypnotic state, as you know, Chris, it's remarkably easy to access the control panel of the brain. Did you want to comment on that?
Actually, yeah. I mean, you... Not so much in your peak performance CD, you don't deal with pain, obviously, but you do have, I believe, in the hypnosis track, an accessing of the control panel of the mind.
Is that so? I've never listened to the damn thing.
For a totally different purpose, but the point is, once you achieve a depth of trance that is sufficient, you don't use indirect, soft suggestions. You go straight after it, and you tell people, just turn down that pain.
You said after it.
Straight after it, I said.
You said after it.
I hope
it's
not.
It's okay. We'll edit it out. We'll just edit it out. But you're right. When the person is in a sufficiently deep trance, you are no longer going into flowery, flourishing, word salad Ericksonian language. You're using very specific language. So we let them access a control panel, an imaginary control panel in their imagination. So it's nicely redundant. And it's also redundant. So what you're going to do is have them find the control for that continuous discomfort you had in your head, whatever, and let them reach out. My addition is that, typically you'd have the person turn the dial, the lever down, whatever, to a different number or a different setting to turn the pain down. Now, what my addition is I bring in something from John Grinder's NLP New Code. I have them actually use their physical hand, put their physical hand out and turn it down, which serves to demark it even better, which is probably one of the reasons when we do mindscaping, well, it is the reason that we put monuments in place when we make a major shift in the unconscious. You want there to be some demarcation that things are going to be different now.
Yeah, I want to make a point here, too, because this is something, of course, I've learned from you. when you're using the control panel mechanism, you're not going to tell somebody to find the knob to turn down that nasty headache that they have in the very front of their head. You're not going to be so specific. Right. You're going to still use, even though you're being direct, you're still using a Milton model language pattern, right?
Yes.
You're going to find the control knob that is appropriate to reduce that discomfort that you have.
In a way that will enable you to live congruently with your life goals and turn it down to the point that your health and personal well-being will extend themselves well into the unlimited horizons of growth and transitory glanativeness, so that when you have rid your... Yeah,
but the point is here, you're being direct about finding a control knob to dial down. You're not being indirect and saying you might begin to notice
there is something
that is a semblance of a dimmer switch that you might notice in some direction.
Yes.
In front of you or behind you. No, it's not going to be like that.
Wide awake now.
So there you go, direct suggestion.
And by moving one of these control levers, etc., with the physical hand, with their eyes shut, in a deep trance, you're going to discover that the person will reduce the pain to a large degree. Now, another one, of course, is to take the pain and find out what it is in a different representational system.
I love this one.
Yeah, so if a pain, of course, is in the kinesthetic or feeling system, and let's say the person has a headache, you can remove the headache from their head, put it in front of them, and ask them what color it is. And they'll say, I don't know. Well, if you did know, what would it be? Well, it's sort of a weird purple. And so then you change it in the other system, in this case, the visual system, or it could be the auditory system. It might be what is the sound of that discomfort, and then change the sound or change the color, put it back in their head as a physical sensation, and you'll notice it has shifted. I remember you did this really elegantly with a guy in a Starbucks.
Yeah, I did it. No, it was in a bar down the street.
Starbucks had paid us to use their name, you fool.
It was my friend Steve.
We'll edit that out.
He fixed his headache by doing exactly what you just described. But I want to point out, obviously, when we say take it out of his head, we don't physically mean you're going to remove something. You're going to have the person imagine.
Yes, he's sitting there with an axe.
If that pain was a color and you were watching it out in front of you now, what color would it be? You presuppose that it would have a color, correct?
Right, and then change it in the visual system and put it back in. And the reason why is it's much too difficult to access and change it directly in the kinesthetic sense.
Now, another point is that some people will say, oh, okay, it's an annoying purple. All right, I'd like you to change it to green. No. What color would be more pleasing to you, right? You don't tell them what color to make it because you have no idea what these colors represent in their mind.
You're absolutely right. The only difference I made with that, Chris, is if there is an obvious color temperature on a scale. Yeah. For example, on the rainbow spectrum, if someone's portraying their headache as bright red or orange and glaring, then I would move it to the cooler color temperatures like a purple or a pale blue or something, or a green, which green, of course, is a universal eco-color since it ties into greenery and chlorophyll, which is almost identical to hemoglobin in the human blood. And the interesting thing about it, because hemoglobin is based on iron and chlorophyll is based on magnesium, otherwise they're chemically identical.
Are they?
Yes.
This, of course,
this is something you won't hear from other hypnotists because they have things like law degrees and stuff like that.
That's almost mean. But we'll edit that out.
We'll edit that out. But anyway, go ahead.
I was going to ask you about this though now. So gone. No, it's coming back. I would still be inclined to suggest the color in that case. Let's say somebody's envisioning this headache as bright red. I would say I might still want to say, would it be more pleasing to you to imagine it being a soft blue or a soft purple? And get a confirmation, right? I'm using this as a yes.
Yes, you are. Or as my old mentor, Derek Balmer, would say, sure.
Sure.
Sure. With his English accent, his hands on his tummy. Sure.
I love it.
It was great.
Okay, so I think we made some pretty good points here.
But there's more, Chris. A distraction is a tremendous way of dealing with pain. Now, being the world's foremost AC/DC fan, as you know, if I had a pain in my ankle from a sprained throbbing ankle or something, if I was third row center for AC/DC's Black Ice Tour, and Angus Young was just rocking the house down at 50 trillion watts, as he does, I wouldn't feel any pain in my ankle at all because I would be in such a powerful up state that it would be completely distracting me from it. So distraction is a classic way of dealing with pain, and so is dissociation. Now, dissociation will help us rid ourselves of both physical pain and emotional pain as well. If someone is afraid in a dentist chair or feels pain in a dentist chair, what I found useful in my own case when I was unable to get sufficient anesthesia to deal with a dursative root canal that essentially was the depth of an oil well. The guy's drilling away like Jack the Ripper, just intent on striking a gusher here. And it still hurt so much that I just dissociated. I imagined I floated up out of the dentist chair and looked down at my body. No, I'm not doing astral projection or something like that, but I'm just dissociating, imagining I'm looking at my body from the outside, and immediately the dissociation rid me of a lot of physical pain. But as Hugh Comerford, the brilliant NLP trainer from NLP Works, has pointed out, there will be a point that the associated state starts to flash across if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I have something I want to bring up here, because whenever we talk about, let's say, dissociating, and you're going to imagine that you're looking at yourself, it's just your imagination. You're visualizing. But what do people tend to email in? They say, I can't visualize.
Well, this is very interesting, Chris.
Now, we have it.
We've talked about this a lot. Now, at my course on Mindscaping that just passed, as we said, one man, a very nice man, Anthony, was a bit late for the course. And so he got in 40 minutes after the class began. We're still pre-framing and setting up a lot of things, so we helped him catch up. But one of the things I said to the group was, people will tell you they can't visualize. And I said, what you do is this. This is the Mandel cure for I can't visualize. I've never seen it fail. And the reason I've never seen it fail is because I can visualize.
Yeah, and I'll just pre-frame also, those of you listening, you know, since he's telling you the secret, you're going to claim it doesn't work.
Yeah, send me $10.
When it's thrown on you and you don't know what's happening, this is exactly what happens, what he's about to describe.
Just edit that cough out. So sure. I said to the class, here's what you do. Somebody will say, I can't visualize. And I typically say, okay, I understand. I don't deny it. I just accept it. And I say, if you could visualize, what would it be like? And right away, the person accesses something in front of them with their hands. Well, up here, I'd see this, and there'd be a border, and this would be bright. And I'm watching their eye accessing pattern, and they're looking up, back and forth, so they're accessing the occipital lobe, both sides of their brain. So they're visualizing to tell me they can't visualize. So everybody laughed, and it was a very hilariously humorous moment, as we usually have in my classes. Now, because as Dr. Mandler says, humor unlocks the model. Mm-hmm. Anthony arrives, has missed this entire thing, so we start the training part. And he said, well, I always have a problem that I can't visualize. And I said, well, what would it be like if you could? And he puts his hands in front of him. He says, well, it'd be this kind of border thing, and it would be really bright, and I'd see the image. And he's visualizing exactly. And as soon as I pointed it out to him, he had this aha moment and realized he'd been visualizing all along.
Yeah, didn't you say something like kind of like you're doing right now?
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
And then it clicked for him, and all of a sudden, the belief disappears, right? Because it was never true.
Yeah, it imploded, yeah.
So all of a sudden, he's completely comfortable with the idea of visualizing.
He can visualize now. And it's interesting because, as John Grinder pointed out, once we have a resource, it is impossible to remember what it was like to not have it.
Yeah.
So if somebody can play an amazing blues scale on a guitar, they can't even remember what it felt like to be struggling along trying to do it.
That's totally true, because when I was a teenager, I decided I wanted to learn how to play guitar, and I can't remember what it was like to try to learn the chord progressions and put your fingers on the frets in the right places. Yeah. I have no recollection of that at all.
A lot of it is the contextual shift of memory, what we doctors call the contextual shift of memory.
There you go.
Because memories are initially built, new memories are always built in the hippocampus. So problems with the hippocampus, which of course means seahorse, because it does look somewhat like a seahorse if one is on a large dose of LSD and sees it at a certain angle, but it can also look like a renegade sperm cell that's much too large. But the hippocampus, Chris, formulates new memories and puts them in the life script. But in time, over weeks, months, years, the memory will physically migrate to the neocortex. And when that happens, we drop the context. We remember the memory, but we don't remember how we learned it. So it's the same with the resources. We have the resource, but the rather dursative installation process tends to disappear on the wayside.
You don't really need it anyway, do you?
No, much like a hitchhiker who jumps in your car, gets off at the nearest bus stop and forgets to shut the door fully, so you've got to leap out and go around to the side and, shut it and realize the car isn't in park, and then all sorts of hilarious problems develop.
Where did that pattern interrupt come from?
This came from the fact, Chris, that as you know, most of my stuff is in the RAM at all times when we're doing these podcasts, which is just another way of being borderline strange, I expect. But if you have all the stuff accessible on the surface at all times, you can do hypnosis.
Yeah. You know what I love is that you're the one who comes up with these weird things.
There's nothing weird about that.
No, not at all.
The Bagman of Edward the Confessor was weird.
There was somebody who emailed, I wish I could remember the gentleman's name, but he emailed us a very long email.
Edward?
It was a wonderful email, not Edward. But he was saying how he appreciated the podcast and how we had this great banter, and he described me as the weird one.
I know, I thought that was wonderful.
I know.
So it means all the hypnotic stuff is happening. We're actually dealing with an iatrogenic installation here, where the means of cure are causing a greater problem. It's what we doctors call iatrogenic installation.
Oh, wonderful. All right, let's get back to a discussion of pain control and stuff. You said something very interesting about how you could actually control emotional pain using glove anesthesia. So talk a little bit about...
Did you say anesthesia?
Anesthesia.
Okay, we'll edit that out anyway. Glove anesthesia is the means of creating a numb hand. Now, we have analgesia and anesthesia. Anesthesia is no sensation at all. That's what we always aim for. Analgesia is sensation but no pain. So we aim for anesthesia because if you aim for analgesia, you'll probably get that. If you aim for the moon, you might hit it. So we aim for anesthesia, no sensation at all. At worst, we will get glove analgesia, where the hand, in the form of a glove over the hand, becomes numb, essentially insensate to pain, and whereupon we can build it, and we tend to move the anesthesia around. So we have the right hand cataleptic hovering, we let it go numb in response to suggestion, maybe building metaphors about shoving it into a snowdrift on a bright, wonderful winter day, and the hand becoming numb and cold, and then the person gives you a nod when it is numb and cold, and you have the anesthesia flow up their arm and down into their other hand. And when you do that, you amplify it. Now, you cannot compound nothing. You have to have some anesthesia to begin with, or analgesia at least. When you have some, you can move it and amplify it by shifting it into another limb. Once it would be in the left hand, you'd have it move down to the foot, and then the other foot. And as you move it around, every time you do so, you compound it, provided you started with some. Once you have the anesthetic or analgesic hand, you can apply it to the source of the pain or discomfort, or if it's something like, a pain of a torn muscle between the shoulder blades, a scapular injury, you can simply permit the numbness to flow up the arm to the site of the injury. And I always build in an anti-inflammatory as well, which will turn down the localized, what we doctors call histamine response, and enable the body to begin to heal rapidly. Now, if the person is suffering from emotional pain, you can do exactly the same thing. Ask them where the emotion is. They might point to their heart or their, the back of their head or something. It will usually be in the torso somewhere, and then you have them apply the anesthetic or analgesic hand and permit the numbness to flow in to take away that particular emotional pain.
What you doctors call emotional pain.
Correct, Chris.
All right. So, emotional pain, you're switching systems. You're going from a physical sensation to an emotion, right? You're changing the system that you're representing, that numbness.
Are we though? Actually, they're both part of the kinesthetic system.
Yes, but they're not.
So
is there a difference?
Well, the physical system that utilizes the sense of touch and therefore the sense of physical pain is using the identical neural pathways for emotional pain.
Is it? Wow.
Identical neural pathways. Yep.
I learned something on I learned many things on every single podcast. That's why it's so awesome to have you here. Oh, that is wild. I did not know that.
No, it's interesting, though, because here's an intriguing thing. We're talking about pain and discomfort. Who was it? Adam last night in our jiu-jitsu class.
Yes.
Was saying that he's got all this numbness of nerve damage. And, of course, I was questioning him on it. In his thumb.
Yeah.
And he's got localized absolute numbness, which is a sign probably of hyperpraxis, where the nerve has been overly stretched and it's caused a numbness. Now, I had 5 surgeries on my hands, as you know, for trigger finger surgeries. And I got hyperpraxis in one of the digits, and consequently, my finger on the inside, the medial surface here, became extremely numb. It's almost back to normal now, but it took years for the sensation to come back, because when you get something like this, it isn't localized. The axon has to grow back in from the central nervous system, and it does it at the rate of something like 1 millimeter a week. So it's very, very slow. Now, having said all that, there was the whole aspect of phantom pain, phantom limb syndrome. Somebody loses a limb and it's amputated, but the brain still projects the limb as being extant. They still think they have it. So they can feel that they're opening and closing their fist, absolutely sense it as being there, even though there is no limb. And it can be painful as well.
Yeah.
So you can remove phantom pain with hypnosis exactly the same as actual pain, although what is pain other than a signal anyway? And the weird thing about phantom limb pain, I've only worked with it once, is when the sensation of the limb completely dissipates. So when they now know they don't have a left arm anymore, it doesn't go in the proper sequence. The middle of the limb disappeared first.
Oh, that's bizarre.
But he could still feel his hand out in space doing this, he said, opening and closing his hand.
That is completely bizarre.
Which can be affected by hypnosis.
Oh, Mike, that is so strange. Okay, we have so much left here that we could talk about, but we're running out of time. I do want to get
the reality is we want to go and have lunch.
Yeah, I do. We're hungry. But I do want you to answer, before you do the metaphor, we got a really good question. This woman, Sherry from Arizona, she actually called me and wanted to talk about the next dates of the hypnosis class, which we've now established is going to be in July because she's traveling in and wants a 5-day straight course rather than 2 weekends. And we had a wonderful conversation. She asked me a few questions, and one of them I want to ask you on this podcast, which is, so she works with patients to do subjects to do hypnosis, and she often starts them in a chair and then works with them for up to 2 hours, I believe she said. I don't think she's saying that she always works that long with them, but up to 2 hours. And so she will typically have them move to a horizontal surface, lying on a mat on the floor, and do hypnosis with them there. And the question was, is it okay? Can you have someone in hypnosis in a chair for 2 hours? Will they be comfortable? And now I think there's a whole bunch of things you could say about this.
Well, she clearly thinks they won't be, based on her question, and the fact that she's actually moving the person partway through the procedure. My answer to that, Sherry, is I do not work with patients / victims / subjects, whatever you want to call them, in any position other than upright in a chair or an easy chair or perhaps a recliner, but I still have them upright. My experience has been if they're lying down, there's too much chance of them falling into a physical sleep. And if they do, you will not affect them the same way. Sleep is not a time for taking in new information. It's time for accessing the REM state and removing the emotionally charged stuff from that day that needs to be resolved. So I would say have the person upright in the chair. Yes, you can use a kitchen chair if you have to. Just ensure you install the installation, nicely redundant there, Chris, that the subject will maintain her own personal ecology. And the way you do this is simply pre-frame it by, if you are uncomfortable at any time, you can shift and move as much as you need to be comfortable. And as you do, you'll go even deeper into trance. And you can give them the pre-frame that they will also be able to stay upright and safe and will not slip out of the chair at any time. Doing that, sitting upright in a comfortable chair, you'll get really powerful hypnotic work, and they do not need to be lying down, nor should they be. You do not want them falling asleep.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about having a comfortable chair. I mean, you don't want to use a chair that you know isn't comfortable, so invest in a decent chair. And do you need to do hypnosis
Why
for...
would anybody buy an uncomfortable chair?
Well, they wouldn't, but, if you just had one lying around and you thought, okay, I'm going to start using this chair
would
now.
Be a good one. Yeah.
Get a decent chair. Do you need to use 2 hours of time to accomplish change with hypnosis?
I would think that's highly unlikely. My students can get change very, very quickly, as you know, and sometimes by adding MINDSCAPING to it or, one of the tapping modalities. Typically, my sessions are always 90 minutes, and for the very first session, I'll do half an hour of information gathering. I want to find out how they know they have a problem. How do they know? What triggers it? What does it enable them to do? What does it prevent them from doing? What does it enable them to not do? What does it prevent them from not doing? Mm-hmm. And this will give me all sorts of insights. Who else does it affect? How will they feel when it's gone? And I'll gather an awful lot of information, and then my unconscious mind will kick in. And the entire session, the remaining hour, usually I'll only need about half of it. So then there'll be the recovery time where they're going to sit in the office for 3 to 5 minutes and just make sure there's no hypnotic hangover, no residual state hanging on from the trance. I'll sever it cleanly and send them back. But typically for the actual hypnosis work, I'm only doing about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour max.
Now that discussion that you have with the client before the formal hypnosis,
the interview.
how much of that is something that you think we should talk about on another podcast? Because my suspicion is there's
Really good point.
a lot of pre-framing going on there,
Yes.
a lot of embedding of suggestions, a lot of valuable...
A lot of presupposition.
A lot of conversational hypnotic
even things
techniques.
like when you leave later on and feel so much better, what's the first thing you're going to do when you get home? This sort of thing.
Yeah, you're putting somebody in a double bind of how they're going to change, or you're using a presupposition, or there's tons we could talk about on this.
We can talk about the pre-talk.
Okay, let's do
As we've just pre-talked.
Let's pre-talk about the pre-talk. Yeah. We're going to plan to make a plan, I think, is a line from a movie that I remember. Let's definitely do that, because I think that will also segue nicely into a discussion about how you can influence people just through ordinary conversation, which we've talked about, but I think that's a really huge topic. People are very interested in that.
Very good.
All right, let us get to the closing metaphor.
What about our empowering
we
question?
didn't do the empowering question, so let's do the empowering question. Mike.
This is the empowering question, and I want all of you listening to consider this very carefully. What is the one thing in the background of your life that is essential and you're completely ignoring it? And what is there in the foreground that you are giving undue attention to? I'll repeat it. What is the one thing in the background that is essential in your life and you are completely ignoring it? And what is there in the foreground that you are giving undue attention to? Think about it. There's a solution for you there.
That's fascinating. That's a great empowering question.
Which brings us to our closing metaphor.
Yes.
Now, I've written the name of the person. Actually, you've got it on the screen in front of us here in our studio.
I'll edit that out.
Yeah, we'll edit that out. I won't say the name, but this is all about how bizarre people in hypnosis can be. Now, when I say that, I don't mean people in a hypnotic state. I mean the people that one meets, typically in hypnosis, in that field, can be very, very strange. Now, I can meet a lot of engineers, like Chris and like my father was, and like Lisa, and they can tend to be rational, sane, engaging people. I can meet a lot of chefs, and they can be temperamental, but wonderfully creative and amazing and glanative. But why is it when we meet hypnotists, they're usually weird, quirky, strange, self-absorbed, or nuts, to use the medical term? A case in point. A very well-known hypnotist I spoke to a couple of years ago. I spoke to him because he had a particular book I was interested in reading because I wanted his approach on dealing with migraine headaches, which is exceptionally good. Despite the fact that his approach was exceptionally good, his brain was exceptionally strange. And he led off on the phone into a tirade in this long-distance call about how he had just been called in an open heart surgery case in Fiji. And I went, okay. He said, they cut the person open in a hypnotic trance. I presume they used what we doctors call the rib-separating jack to get past the severed sternum. You have to force the ribs open and then remove this woman's living, beating heart, placed it on a metal table, stainless steel one presumes, while she was in a trance, put another heart in and glued it in with crazy glue, super glue. All this time she was in trance, stitched her up, put her back together, and he flew home. But what makes it even more bizarre, just in case you think that this might have happened, he told me completely straight-faced, although I couldn't see his face, I'm calibrating it from his voice, that they flew him to Fiji in 3 hours from North America. And the way they did this was they got a World War II Spitfire, hollowed it out, and put a Boeing 747 Rolls-Royce engine in this thing, and ramped it up so that this Spitfire could now go in excess of 4,000 miles per hour, flew him to Fiji, did the surgery, came back all in the same day, and they cleared the skies over North America so he could land because he was coming in at such an incredibly fast rate of approach. Just when you think you've heard it all, and just when you think that hypnotists aren't crazy, most of us are.
I love that story. All right, with that, we conclude podcast session number 30 of Brain Software with Dr. Mike Mandel.
And Chris Thompson.
I can't believe we've done 30 already. That's awesome. So let's keep doing them, man. I love them, and I think everyone out there loves them. So go leave a rating at the iTunes. I was going to say the iTunes website. Go to iTunes and leave a rating for the show. We love getting your feedback. So, drop a rating and drop a comment as well. And visit the website, MikeMandelHypnosis.com. If you want to get on our mailing list, then you will always be up to speed on what we're doing in terms of new content for podcasts and new courses and new products and all kinds of awesome stuff. So that's it for podcast session number 30. See you next time, folks.
About 2 days after the big push, I was speaking to Colonel Fitzgerald and Bryce Morgan, and we sat there in his hut, as usual, which, as I've remarked before, wasn't much of a hut, really. Just some cardboard wired together and painted with vinegar, and in this case, a bit of white wine. And as we sat there in the darkness with the shells rocketing down in the distance, he began to sing to me, and he sang, "If ever I should leave you, let it be in hypnosis. 'Cause if you're in a trance, then I know you'll be kind. Oh no, not in the trenches, with barrage of hypnosis, and James S. Dale and Milton all the time. But if ever you would fight me, let it be in a street fight. 'Cause if it were in a street fight, I'd rip off your..."